Good evening. I hope this finds you well. We're going to talk a bit about the state's ongoing electrical problems. Those of us in Sacramento, we're a bit isolated from that. We have SMUD, but not all of us have SMUD. And quite frankly, this is a communal problem. In the last 2 decades, we went from a functional electricity market to a deregulated market that wasn't really deregulated. It was just regulated differently. That failed and led to the Enron scandal and all the madness that followed that. And then we have this solution to that was this current state where we have essentially a centrally controlled market that fails under stress. And this is not the first time. It happened a couple years ago. And they didn't address the problems because fundamentally, the problem is, while we all agree that we need to live cleaner, one of the solutions to that was we were going to pull off power before we had replacement power. And we can't do that. We've all done our best to save electricity. We all went from incandescent bulbs to fluorescent bulbs, and now we have LED bulbs. Even computers now use half the electricity they did just a few years ago. But yet we're still having this electrical problem. This is a supply problem. It's not a demand problem. We did not allow our electrical supply to keep up with demand despite all of our efforts at conservation. And so how do we solve this problem? Well, the problem is we don't solve this problem. We have to allow energy producers to produce energy. And I encourage all of us to find cleaner ways. I have no problems with solar energy, especially now that we actually have ways to conserve it with batteries. Those have their own environmental issues, but hey, if it's better than coal, it's better than coal, right? It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be better than the way before. Hydro is a good, clean source of water and energy. But we've been taking our hydropower dams down. And in some cases for good reason. But we now have the technology to do hydropower differently in a more environmentally friendly way. We now know how to mitigate some of the more damaging effects of hydropower. And so we can start to create a new type of hydropower. And we should be looking into ways of doing that. We don't need big, massive dam projects anymore. We have high efficient, low flow generators. We can find different ways of doing this. But what we need is people willing to look outside the box, willing to look for other solutions. Currently, our political class, our political solutions, they are run by two different things. You have activists and you have the political class. And they kind of accidentally work together to shut out the average people. It's not on purpose. We're not sitting here saying anybody's out there trying to damage society, trying to shut people out, trying to purposely disenfranchise the average person. But it's what happens. The powerful and connected have their voice. The activist has their voice. The political establishment has power. It's the rest of us, the individual, that gets left out. And when it comes to the electricity grid, it's the same thing. We could have solved many of these problems by allowing communities to have their own municipal power supplies. SMUD doesn't have to be there's only a handful of organizations around the state like SMUD. We could make it easier for cities and towns and counties to create their own. We make it difficult for power producers to create power plants, even short-term, energy power plants. We got this almost religious fervor against even something like natural gas. And while I would prefer we not have to burn natural gas, I would rather us burn natural gas than have people melt in the heat, to not have enough energy to run our daily lives. I am not an electrical person. I don't know very much about the electrical market. That's not what I do. I'm willing to admit that. But I can learn. I can, talk to people. I can educate myself. I can look for a wide variety of solutions and come together with other people who have done the same thing, and we can find a way out of this mess. But we can't do it if we believe that a handful of people in back rooms with politicians, they're not going to make the right decisions for us. They're going to make the right decisions for them. They're going to investigate themselves. They're going to slap themselves on the wrist, say, we tried our best, and move on. And then in a few years, we'll have the same problem because he won't fundamentally address the issue. This is a complex issue. And anybody who's telling you any different, tells you that there's simplistic solutions, is lying. Energy markets are different. They're not the same as other markets, largely because you don't want 10 companies' wires running across the cities. It's like water. You don't want to have a bunch of different pipes. And so there is some kind of sense for a communal guardianship of at least the infrastructure, if not the owner. And so if we need to reimagine how that infrastructure is managed, then let's talk about it. But let's actually talk about the issue. Is that the infrastructure needs to be managed. Power generation is one thing, and it was probably stupid to separate the power generation from the transmission. Power generation is highly profitable. The transmission part of the business, is cost. You charge your costs. And when you separate that business, you created a problem. But that's what happens when politicians who don't understand markets, make decisions. That's what happens. So we have to be more careful. When you have people who don't understand something making a decision, and when you're dealing with politics, you have to. There's no way around it. You can't have experts making all these decisions. You need transparency. Everybody needs to see what's going on so you can point out, hey, you guys are forgetting X. You guys are forgetting Z. You guys didn't consider Y. I don't know what X, Y, and Z are, but you can tell me, and I will listen. Thank you for your time. Good night. Stay cool and love everybody.